Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Mike Troy. I'm the editorial director of Progressive Grocer and Retail Leader. We are assembled on this call really under the most unusual of circumstances that I don't think any of us could have seen or imagined just a few weeks ago. How we got here happened really quickly. I'm going to just take a couple of seconds and just set the stage here for our topic and explain why we're here and what we hope to accomplish, and then we'll get right into the presentation. It was just 2 weeks ago the World Health Organization declared a pandemic. March 11th, I think, was the date. 2 weeks or 2 days later, we get President Trump declaring a national emergency. Then we have states going on lockdowns, companies implementing work from home rules, schools being dismissed, and then we're all watching this tremendous stock market volatility, and we're getting frequent media updates about the number of new cases and deaths related to COVID-19. So it's all very serious stuff, and people are understandably anxious and scared. And by people, I mean obviously consumers, but then even employees at our own companies. So very serious, unusual, kind of scary time. And then, looking at yesterday, we have the Senate pass this $2 trillion stimulus package, unprecedented. And then this morning, probably some of you have seen the numbers from the Labor Department about jobless claims. For the week ended March 21st, we have 3,283,000 jobless claims, which again is unprecedented. We're running out of words unprecedented words to describe unprecedented. But that's an increase of 3 million from the prior week, and it broke a prior record of about 700,000 from 1982. Now, I'm mentioning all this because these factors have created this really, really unique operating climate for retailers. And it's why our topic today, Coping with COVID-19, the grocery industry in action, is so appropriate. We're seeing these tremendous efforts by the nation's grocers under really the most challenging of circumstances, and everyone's trying to understand, when we get through this, how we get through it, and then what's next. And so I'm excited today because we have 3 speakers with us who really, in the spirit of goodwill and a desire to help others, have come together to share information. And the hope is everyone can come away from our time together today with, useful insights you can take back, apply to your own business, or, just maybe new, fresh thinking about, where we're headed and how you can position yourself. So joining us, we have David Smith, President and CEO of Associated Wholesale Grocers. Dave leads the nation's largest cooperative food wholesaler to independently owned supermarkets. Company serves more than 1,100 member companies with more than 3,000 locations in 28 states. So Dave leads a big business with a broad perspective, and he's going to share that perspective with us. And then also joining us is Ted Balistreri. Ted is co-owner of Sendix Food Market, an operator of 17 stores in the greater Milwaukee area. Ted has a great perspective, from a local perspective with a concentration of stores in a major market. And then from the standpoint of how technology is impacting all of this, or how technology can be leveraged to help with current challenges beyond, we have Brian Moyer, CEO of Freshop, a provider of digital and e-commerce solutions to independent grocers. So the way this is going to flow today is we're first going to have some initial comments from Dave, and then we'll switch to Ted, and then we'll transition to Brian. And we're going to hear about what they're seeing and hearing, and then really hope to have a conversation that all of those listening can benefit from in the truest sense of community service. We would like this to be as interactive as possible. We actually already have some questions in the queue. So as we go through this presentation and these fairly brief initial comments, feel free to use the question feature on the webinar platform and get some stuff in there, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. All right, that's it for me. I'll be jumping in and out throughout the presentation, but I'm going to turn it over to Dave at this point, and he's going to give us sort of the big picture view. Dave, you want to get us started?
Absolutely, and thanks, Mike. I'll share a little bit about our experience in the past 2 weeks, the present, and some about our thoughts about the future. And as Mike said, going back to Wednesday, March 11th, our members were inundated with what was previously unimaginable consumer demand. Our stores experienced sales surges of up to 400% for hours and/or days. And overall demand seems to have been around 200% over the prior year for the first 14 days of the battle. Most of the panic phase is now being replaced with the shelter-in-place orders, and we're seeing sales remain 30 to 40% up generally. As the crisis started, supply challenges immediately emerged as we were unable to meet and fulfill all of the unexpected buying demands. The stores obviously also saw some level of panic as they were trying to outthink where the volume was going, and orders were increasing tenfold oftentimes. We've now had vendors, 100 of their top vendors or so, that have placed strict allocation limits, and the remainder have simply canceled trucks or have been running way behind or just failed to fulfill the orders. Against our desire and really our cultural values, we were forced to place daily capacity limits by store and fixed order maximums by item on some of the short supply products in order to be able to maintain sustainable operations. You know, it's really worked out, and we're blessed to say that we've been able to maintain uninterrupted supply to all of our stores, and accordingly their feedback is that they think that we've been able to outperform most of their chain competitors. We promptly expanded our inbound and outbound shifts and opened up for 7-day operations and extended hours where we could. Our production teammates are working 60 hours weekly in some cases, which we all know isn't sustainable in those physically demanding jobs. In recognition of their extraordinary effort, we did put in emergency pay raises, as many other employees have done. For the past 4 weeks, we've had a COVID-19 internal team that's been monitoring the situation in real time and have continued to elevate and escalate various plans as hotspots started to surround our facilities. And those special precautions to restrict third-party access, screen essential visitors and deliveries, maintain adequate social distance internally, the cleaning and sanitation that practically every business needed to do. While the vast majority of our jobs don't allow us to work from home, we did identify hundreds, and they are doing that, of course, temporarily as they can. While we don't have a clear view of the future, we can reasonably expect that retail demand will remain elevated for the foreseeable future due to the impact of retail food service closures, the slow return to normalcy around being in and around close proximity to others, and great apprehension about being in restaurants and crowded shopping places. We believe that approximately 10% of restaurants will not reopen. And we do also believe that QSR is probably best positioned to spring back rather quickly, but maybe some other food service businesses that do reopen will have a longer and more challenging path to regain consumer confidence for on-the-premises consumption. We can also expect that grocery consumers will adapt by shopping more online, utilizing options for delivery and click and collect, and figuring out ways to buy their needs in a way that they feel safe and allows them to maintain social distancing. The main emphasis of our team in the past 2 weeks has been around sustainability and increasing the long-term capacity of the supply chain. We've entered into a lot of different contract arrangements with some of the nation's leading food service companies in order to bring some of their staff on board, and we've been so blessed by that. We are bringing hundreds into our workforce, and the collaboration with those companies has been fantastic. Our heart goes out to our brethren in those other businesses, and just working with them allows us to be able to do something to hopefully help out in this time. Overall, we need about 1,000 teammates in the next few weeks. If manufacturers' capacities will catch up, we also will need to leverage third-party logistics platforms with those food service partners to bypass our facilities on some fast-moving product. Catching up with the inventory deficit in our facilities and the member stores won't be easy, it won't be fast, or without a high cost. The weakest link currently within the supply chain is the manufacturer, unfortunately, and the supplier component. And we're working daily with them to ensure that we get our fair share of what they have. But ramping up at wholesale, ramping up at retail far exceeded their capacities. Where we're able to ramp up 50%, many of them are unable to do that. And we're working on capacities to be able to increase our capacity as much as 80%. And the CPG companies are struggling to get to 30% extra. While most have now started producing a much narrowed down range of their top-selling SKUs, the time to catch up will likely be measured in months instead of weeks for many of them. We're also urging manufacturers and suppliers to retrofit food service manufacturing lines temporarily to align with retail packaging so more capacity can be surged into the system. You know, overall, we have just been so feel so fortunate to be able to do something for the nation. And we've received incredible communications from the public, recognizing our stores, their brave and courageous teammates, and recognizing the importance of the food supply chain and all the teammates. They're doing their jobs to keep wheels turning and keep the cases flowing. It's been a time that the nation has leaned on grocers, and I feel like that the grocers have done our part to keep America fed. I'd like to hand it off now to Ted Ballesteri, and instead of channeling what our grocers are telling us, Ted owns a family business, and he's dealing with it each and every day, and he'll be able to give you a unique perspective that only an owner-operator can have. Ted?
Thank you, David, and good afternoon to everybody. I echo your comments regarding how well the industry has held up to this onslaught of dramatically increased business. And we should all be proud of the work that all of our team members have done taking care of customers. As I'm talking to my company, we're a family-owned, third-generation company, and looking at the impact of COVID-19 and trying to give them directives, I've kind of taken a perspective that what we're experiencing is going to go through three phases. The first phase is pretty much the phase that we're just emerging out of, and that's the stock-up phase. Customers coming in, buying staples, hoarding, panic buying, volume up dramatically, as David mentioned, in inventories and supply being stretched. I think we're now kind of out of that phase and moving into the second phase that I call the temporary normal phase. It's not the new normal, it's the temporary normal phase. And I think that this phase will last for the next 6 to 8 weeks, probably through April. This period, we're going to see increased volume, but not as intense. I think, you know, as we're calculating and looking at it, it's probably going to be in that 25 to 45% increase range. We're going to see fewer customers in our stores, but much higher basket rings, and we're already seeing that now. The supply chain, I think, will continue to be stretched, but I think we'll see it starting to catch up, and we're already seeing that as we're restocking our shelves. We have actually very good supply, except for a few very high demand items like toilet paper and disinfectant wipes. Variety is likely to be impacted in certain commodities. I think we'll see, and we've already heard that certain toilet paper manufacturers are just going to be manufacturing their best sellers. So we're going to see a little bit less variety. I think we're going to see, as we get further into this phase, increased sales in perishable departments, particularly produce. I think people have their staples. Now they're going to come back into the stores and replenish those items that are more perishable, like produce, dairy, and meat. I think we're also going to see during this phase the continued robust sales in online, curbside pickup and delivery. I think once we emerge from the second phase, we're going to go into the third phase, which I'm calling the slow tail. This is probably going to be post the reopening of restaurants. I think it will last and extend through the remainder of this year, especially if this virus turns out to be seasonal. Sales will be up but probably not, as high as that second phase, and will be tailing off as we go through the year. It will take time for people to venture out and get back to socializing again. From a retailer perspective, keeping well informed regarding the rapidly changing environment, especially in your specific geographic area, is very important. Always keep in mind that our number one priority is to keep our customers and employees safe during this time. Projecting a sense of calm and normalcy is doing a good service to your community and for your employees. Some practice steps, and we've been in contact. We're fortunate to be a member of a number of different share groups and industry groups, keeping on up to date regarding best practices and the different directives coming down from the CDC and other regulatory agencies is really important. Some of the things that we've implemented that you may want to consider: reserve the first hour of the day for at-risk customers. That has been very well received by our community. We have somebody in our vestibules wiping down carts, making sure that they're clean and sanitized. We have sanitizer at all registers and throughout the stores for customers and employees to use. Wiping down door handles and frequently touched areas throughout the day on a schedule. We've built a schedule where somebody in our staff is going out periodically during the day and sanitizing each of those handles and frequently touched areas. We've suspended all sampling and suspended all service bars, salad, hot bars, coffee bars, soup bars, etc. We've added tremendous capacity, or in the process of adding tremendous capacity to our online curbside pickup and delivery options. As you can imagine, online is through the roof, and I think we've added about 35 personal shoppers to help us with the increased demand, and we continue to add shoppers. We've put together a very strict cleaning list for our third-party cleaning service that comes in overnight and makes sure that our stores are completely disinfected. We've discontinued the use of reusable bags for the time being, and we've also discontinued taking back product returns, again for the safety and well-being of our customers and our employees. One thing that is becoming very important is that we are watching for and managing our pricing. What we're seeing is that in certain commodities, prices are increasing, and we need to be very cognizant of the message that we're sending to the community and making sure that nobody feels that we are gouging. We've added physical barriers at our registers and service counters to add that layer of protection for our customers and employees, and we are practicing social distancing in our stores as much as we can practically do so. With our staff, we're encouraging personal responsibility as the first line of defense. We're asking them to frequently wash their hands, practice social distancing, and taking care of themselves by watching, the sleep that they get, the hours that they work, how are they taking time to eat well, etc. We are monitoring their hours to make sure that nobody is working an exorbitant amount of hours and may get stressed out, and we're encouraging self-reporting if they become sick or ill or are in contact with somebody that's sick or ill. We've also made sure that all employees understand that they will not lose their jobs if they are missing work during this period of time. In addition, we've implemented, like David, we've implemented a bonus for our employees to just thank them for the hard work that they are doing. Today in our stores, every employee is getting a free meal, a lunch, or a dinner, depending on their shift. Again, we're monitoring their hours and showing genuine care for all team members. At the executive level of our company, we have a task force. We have a conference call daily at 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. every day, monitoring the dynamics of the business and making sure that we're taking all the steps necessary to keep our customers and our employees safe. in all aspects throughout our business, we are being incredibly transparent and accessible to both customers and employees. Like David, I'm incredibly proud of the way our industry has reacted to this. Essentially, our entire nation's food supply responsibility has fallen on grocers, and I think that we have done a great job reacting. With that, I'll turn it over. I think Brian is next.
Yeah, Ted, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I would like to first thank both Ted and David for taking the time for this. It's been an incredibly challenging time for independents, for suppliers, and what they've been doing in keeping that food and access to food going. I think for the first time in many Americans' lives, they're seeing a challenge in the opportunity and access to food that they've never seen before. We've just seen this explosion of what's happening there, and unprecedented is not a superlative that really covers what we're talking about when we talk about the impact of COVID across our society, across the whole world, really. So many of the things that we're doing, nobody had plans for any of this. It's all being done, seat of the pants, people getting together and talking, and there's such a big community in grocery that are working together to make sure that the supplies are coming from the factories to the warehouses, from the warehouses to the stores, that the stores are able to get it out. And along that, as Ted mentioned and David mentioned, the health and safety of both associates and shoppers has been so important in trying to figure out those things, like putting up plexiglass shields in stores, things that are being done right now in Sendix and other locations to be able to do that. We really saw Thursday, March 12th is where we really saw an explosion of online sales. And it's been different for us as an international company with more than 2,000 stores. We could see the explosion of not just the coronavirus and what's happening there, but the impact of social regulations, the way that people were adopting those. So in different locations, online shopping went really quickly. But when you think about schools closing and restaurants closing, one of the things that's missing here is we think about this as just an impact on the industry and people are buying more groceries just because that they need them. When you really think about what's happening there, every school child in the United States that is not going to school today is probably having to have a school lunch provided through their grocery store. And that used to come from a different supply chain in things that come in 5-gallon or 20-gallon containers. And so there's a big movement of things that are done that can't be really moved quickly. And the whole grocery industry has just done an amazing job of dealing with those supply chain challenges. Think about and layer that to the next level of all the restaurants that are closed. So it's not just the effect of the employees in those restaurants not being able to work and rent not being able to be paid, but the calories that were consumed in those restaurants, all of those meals that were consumed in restaurants that are closed are shifting over. And the only place that people can get food is the grocery store. And that's, of course, just increased exponentially the pressure on grocery stores to deliver. We've seen across our platform at 2,000 plus stores a 10x increase in sales. I think most of our grocery store customers are seeing 2 to 5x in store, but their online sales have just exploded. And that's a combination of people not being able to get to the store and needing to order to be safe, not wanting to go into those crowds, but also they don't know what's available. They don't know what's going to be in the store. And so being able to place an order on time and pick what they hope to be able to get and place that order has been really critical for the health and safety of people, but also for their to stay calm and to understand that we're all going to get through this, but there's definitely going to be challenges in there. We've seen the stores really step up to that. So we've seen, chains that we had that were doing 2 stores of e-commerce and they had 8 other stores that they weren't really ready to do e-commerce yet. They turned on e-commerce in a day and they're doing it in their stores, training people, getting it out the door, trying to help people with social distancing. We've seen a surge in third-party delivery services going, although 80% of the increase has been on the pickup side of things. So people coming to the store to take their groceries back with them. A big part of that is the stores are able to fulfill that much quicker. The delivery services struggle being able to get the order done as quick because they've got to have a driver involved. But if you can go to the grocery store and pick it up, that can happen quicker. Some of our great partners like DoorDash, any store that's on Freshop can run DoorDash orders out of their store, so DoorDash will just do the last mile. Well, DoorDash has stepped up and realized that there's other challenges there, and so they're launching a program today for 60 plus for free delivery. So any of their member stores that are on DoorDash can offer free delivery to people that are 60 plus and be able to get that out there. And so the retailers and DoorDash are splitting the cost for that to get that done. but we're recognizing as a community what we need to do. And those things cover a lot of different areas in there. You know, the competitive natures of grocery stores, as we all know, you know, all of us have a couple of different grocery stores that we can deal with in our hometown, and we make our choice and we do that. What we're seeing is grocers that have fought tooth and nail, their families have been next to each other, or they're fighting the big grocer down the street for years or decades. They're coming together and saying, how do we help our community? How do we work together? You can do this, I can do that. I've got toilet paper, you've got cans, and people are really working together to get that done and to help the communities. I keep getting phone calls from grocers, and they always make me laugh, because in all of everything that's going on, and you think of the pressure in a grocery store, trying to get product in, trying to get this done, keep your employees safe, and service your community, every grocer that calls me, regardless of the time of day, starts off with, hey, I know you're really busy. I'm sorry to bother you. And it just makes me laugh when I think that that person has, you know, the thought that they might be impacting what I'm doing today when they're dealing with what they're doing. So we're so happy to be part of that. And then when I listen to that conversation, every phone call is about, how can I leverage technology to get groceries out to my community? How can I help my community? Nobody's calling and saying, how do I make more money? How do I charge for something because my labor is going up and I've got to bring all these people in there? It's just, how do I get things out the store to be able to do that? So we've seen new stores. We're launching about 300 stores a week on our platform for people to be able to do online to communities that didn't have it before. You know, we're hiring new people, including staff that got laid off last Friday because their company is going to get affected by COVID-19. They've started to cut back, and we're having people reach out to us. And yeah, the grocery industry is hiring right now. So there's a lot of challenges that are happening there, but I think grocery is really stepping up. In the United States, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but if you look around the world, what's happening in other areas, we have a customer in Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, about 1.2 million people on an island. It's 1,000 miles off the coast of Madagascar. Yesterday, they just closed everything, including grocery stores. So it's shelter in place, but you can't go to the grocery store to get groceries. So they're switching overnight to delivery or pickup to everybody, all being done by the government and cooperative agencies. So there's all these agencies that are working together to be able to accomplish that. You know, but think about the impact in our country if we said, okay, you're not even going to have a grocery store open, we're going to bring it to you, and the challenges in being able to do that. So I think we all have to be really happy with how the United States has come together and how we're working to get this done. There's certainly challenges to get that. I agree totally with Ted that there's 3 phases to this. From a technology perspective and what we're seeing with the stores, we see the 3 phases as being what we're in right now, which is just getting groceries to the customers. Stores are cutting red tape. As David said, they're signing new contracts. They're getting things done to take competitive organizations or whoever they can to get food to people. I think phase 2 is we start to return to some kind of normalcy over the summer where people are, coming out of shelter and they're looking to see what they're going to do, and restaurants might start opening. Grocers and other retailers are going to have to be planning for what's going to happen in the fall. If COVID follows the patterns of other pandemics and returns in the fall, we need to be prepared for that. And so stores are going to be having click and collect programs in place. They're going to have new supply chain agreements. They might have product levels that are different. They might have plans that they can implement really quick in the fall to say, hey, it's 1 package of toilet paper. It's 1 of this, 2 of this. This is strict limits that we're going to put on people. You can't fill a cart with meat. So it is quite unprecedented, and we really think that the grocery industry is going to continue to step forward and really lead the charge to keep people fed. Freshop is really honored to be part of the grocery industry in the spirit of helping their communities, and we're really happy to have everybody here today for this discussion.
Okay, thanks, Brian, and thanks, Dave and Ted. Are you guys ready for some questions? We got a lot of questions.
You bet.
Let's go.
Yeah, so I'm going to just fire these off. You guys can take them. Whoever wants to take them. I try to keep your answers brief, and we'll get through all of them that we can. First one: have wholesalers extended their credit terms to grocery customers, and how are wholesalers dealing with an increase in accounts receivable?
I guess that would be to me, Mike. We have not changed our credit terms. I do not know of any of our peer companies that have.
Okay. What do you think bulk departments look like in the future? A lot of retailers have bulk displays. What's happening with those? Where do you see that going?
Ted, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think we also need to look at all the self-service bars, whether it be a hot bar or a salad bar, and maybe rethink about how we're managing those and making sure that they're as clean and sanitized as we possibly can. I know for our business, we've shied away from bulk departments just because of the sanitation issue. It'll be interesting to see how that develops over time. We don't have any currently in our stores. David, what about your retailers? Do they have big bulk displays?
Some of them do, Ted. We've got a huge number of self-service, everything from hot foods and salad bars. We all remember, you remember the norovirus that kind of caused people to get out of the salad bar business in the 90s. But with coming up with better fixtures and better housekeeping, they've been very, very, very popular, as well as self-service food bars in a lot of stores. And but as you said, people are going to think our generation will be forever changed, and our thinking about touching those things that others touch will change things. There's nothing to make us believe that that coronavirus is being spread through food itself, but touching things that others touch and being in close proximity to others is going to be a big concern going forward, and will cause people to kind of question how can they best cope and keep themselves safe.
Suppliers are always in various phases of launching and introducing new products. Maybe this is a TED question, but how are you handling this currently? Suppliers looking to bring a new brand or product to market.
I'll tell you, we'll see how the business develops over the next couple of weeks. I can tell you from our perspective, through that first phase that we're just getting out of, it's been all hands on deck. We haven't had any chance to think about anything other than getting product out on the shelves as fast as we possibly can. That being said, I think that it's important for us as an industry to try to get back as soon as we can to a normal cadence and a normal way of doing business. And I think at least we're going to take the position in our business that we're going to try to, if somebody wants to introduce a new product or et cetera, we're going to try to accommodate that and go forward with that as soon as possible. Again, trying to get back to a normal way that we've done business in the past.
Yeah, on the digital side, we have a lot of visibility across many stores and what they're selling and what we're watching products that go through. And I would like to say, and I think David would know much more on this, but we're not seeing food shortages anywhere across any of our customer base. We're seeing product shortages. So there's categories of products that are certainly limited. We all know the famous ones like toilet paper and things like that. But there's, in most of the places where we really need to survive, the food that's being provided and the things that people need to be able to get by day to day, you might not be able to get the brand that you want. You might not be able to get cold cereal, and you may need to switch to hot cereal or things like that. But the food is definitely there and moving through the pipelines. I know there's certain stores that definitely are getting completely picked free and they're providing things through. But if you look in any community, there's definitely access to it. And so I don't think that we need to be thinking, hey, there's not enough food to go around. It's really organizing, getting that food in the right place. And people have to make the choice that you're not going to have all of exactly the same brands that you used to have. You're not going to be able to do that. I think we've seen struggles in the natural and organic side because their pipeline just isn't as deep. It's not as many products. So when that bench goes through, they don't have as much to be able to deal with it. But I think in the traditional mainstream products, we've seen really good availability across the whole thing. It's just there's some frustration maybe on not being able to get what you really like. David, could you speak a little bit more to, what is the stability of our food supply? What are you guys seeing down the road with that?
Well, food isn't the issue. As you said, it's all math. It's very logical. We were told 15 days ago that every households should have 2 weeks worth of stock. And then in the following 2 weeks, everybody bought an additional 2 weeks. So 2 weeks plus 2 weeks equals 4 weeks and 2 weeks, right? So within that, though, however, there are tremendous changes in demand. If you look at an item like a hand sanitizer, they're up 3,000%. There is no production, and there is nothing that had ever been conceived that would produce hand sanitizer at that rate. And whereas there's other things, though, that are illogical. Bathroom tissue. So we had an 800% increase in bathroom tissue. That is not directly tied to an increased usage like the hand sanitizer, because the finite number of uses with the toilet paper is going to remain consistent, right? So it's where they just swept out more than what was necessarily needed for that 2 week ramp up. There is going to be elevated increases in several things on an ongoing basis, and it's very logical. Things that have to do with cleaning and sanitizing, those are going to be highly concerning for a very long time, all the rest of this year, right? And into the immediate future. But there's going to be many other things that are going to follow after they've got their 2 week supply of ramen noodles and pasta. Chances are they may not use that. They may know that will be good for the case that they may have to shelter in place. And then they go back to buying fresh meats and produce and the normal, because they've moved that business from the restaurant channel. But overall, it isn't an issue with the ability to have the food. Some things have been moved up, and it can happen fairly easily in the supply chain, and some takes much longer to react. Consumer packaged goods do not have the ability to increase their output the way that we took that capacity out of the system, and it will take them longer to catch up. Most of those manufacturers have streamlined their assortment, reduced down from many duplicative sizes and packages to just the top items in order to focus production on the highest volume items to catch up faster. So variety will be missing and labels, but overall the supply chain and the availability will respond and has responded very quickly.
I think that's a really great point that people need to consider when they look at an empty shelf and they're frustrated with that in the supplier. If you think of as consumers, how were we buying 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago? And for a lot of people, when you walked into the grocery store or you went online to place an order, you were buying for the next meal, for tonight. And we didn't have a lot of stock, and we weren't thinking in that context of how do I have 2 weeks of supply? The same rush that every American went through to go online and place their order, to run to the store and run to 3 different stores and get all that kind of stuff. Think of that at the macro level, where David and his entire team had to do that exact same thing. Their grocery stores are the big suppliers and the manufacturers that are providing that. They have a finite amount of stuff. Those people are supplied by corn and everything else. Drive around the country right now. There's no corn being harvested right now. It's all there. It's in the pipeline. It's all getting done. But the same way that we plan out for a day or two in advance where it was before, we did that for a very real reason. That was the way we wanted to live. Stores have adapted to that. The supply chain has adapted to that whole just-in-time kind of mentality where we don't have these, enormous warehouses that are filled with stuff for 2 years. We're producing because Americans want fresh stuff. They don't want stuff that's been sitting there for a long time. And so there's had to be a lot of adaptation on how are we going to deal with that big change. As a technologist, I look at what's happening to me. Our team is we're on calls 24 hours a day right now. We're on webinars. We're launching new stores. We're talking to them. I'm frequently now getting a busy signal for the first time in a long time where I can't make a call on my cell phone. It's unable to connect to that service. Some of the different web sharing platforms are struggling where you can't get connected, the internet quality. There's a lot of people that are working from home. The people that were running these big platforms like Microsoft Teams, and they were out there selling and trying to get people on their platform. Nobody planned for 80% of the U.S. workforce to all of a sudden be at home working and trying to talk over video. And all of those different impacts in our society are affecting. We all need to work together and really cooperate and collaborate and get through this. But we also need to realize that up and down our supply chain, the person that we buy our groceries from, where they get their groceries, how they get their power and their trucks and everything else, those people are all being affected the same way. They're all having to be careful for their health and safety to be able to do it. They're having to get the product in there, but there's very real constraints around that. So I'd like to see where we're going to resolve over the next few weeks, especially to see where things go. But I look forward to seeing America step up to this challenge and really do it. I've seen it happen with the stores and the suppliers and everybody that we're working with, and really excited to see that as dark as this is and all the stress that's going on, how our country is coming together to be able to get this all together, to work together, to get through this and to get through these next phases.
I think that what will be interesting in the aftermath of this is the long-term impact of online grocery. And I don't know, Brian, what do you think? I'm of the opinion that this will solidify some customers that were waffling whether they should go online or not. A lot of them are going to get very comfortable with online as a result.
Yeah, we had a phone call last Sunday night with a store that runs 3 different chains, 152 grocery stores spread across 2 countries. Called us Sunday night. We talked again Monday morning. They signed up. You know, we didn't send a contract to them. We sent emails back and forth. Here's how it's going to work. Here's what we'll do. Normally that would be an 8 to 12 week process to get that done. W Live Thursday of next week at the latest. They might launch this weekend. It's more of a store operations thing to do that. So we're seeing that immediate move of people that maybe didn't think it was appropriate for their community. I think the bigger thing that's going to happen with those phases that I talked about is over the summer, every business is going to reevaluate how would they deal with another occurrence of COVID-19 and how do they plan for that. For online grocery, it's really looking like over the summer, every grocer and probably many retailers are going to realize that if they don't have a plan in place, if they don't have at least a solid click and collect platform in place by the end of September, if COVID-19 returns like the Spanish influenza did in 1918, and we have a really big recurrence where people are aware of it, and it will very quickly switch to people sheltering in place and following the rules and doing things. If stores don't have a really dynamic digital plan in place, they might not only be in trouble, they might not be able to survive. So I think there's going to be a lot of movement over the next, over the summer for sure, where companies are quickly reevaluating, but knowing, hey, that's coming. I've got to be prepared for that in the fall. I certainly hope in the fall nothing happens and we all look back kind of like Y2K and say that wasn't as bad as we thought it could have been. But Ted, I think you're right. People are really waking up to the fact that online grocery is going to be a requirement for people to move forward, and it might be maybe a more primary way of where things are going to go.
I noticed there's a question that came through regarding growth numbers around online orders. I can tell you that our growth rate is tenfold, and we're a Freshop customer, and it's only limited by the fact that we're at capacity. Otherwise, it would just keep going. So definitely, and again, as I mentioned during my commentary, we're adding personal shoppers to handle these orders as fast as we can. We've added about 35, maybe 40 people so far since in the last 7 to 10 days, just to handle the increase in orders.
Yeah, we've seen retailers like Bevmo in California where, their beer, wine, and spirits, they had to close their stores. They're not running like a grocery store where it's open. So it's click and collect only and delivery. I think one person can go into the store to shop at a time. It's really changed the way they're doing business. Hopefully this is a very short-term thing and we're going to turn around from that. But as you said, Ted, there's labor involved in getting those groceries together. I saw some of the questions in here that were talking about if an associate is tested positive, what is going to happen to them? What are they going to do? Everybody is trying to be really cautious of that. And I think that's what we're all concerned about is if you go to any group situation, what that is. And so you think of as a consumer, I'm going to a grocery store, but I know a big part of it, Ted, for your team is, and David, for your team that are meeting with people that they have no control over, but they've got to get those groceries into someone's hands. So being able to manage that and deal with that. But we all have to be mindful. It's not as simple as go out and hire 200 people, bring them in and get it done. There's food safety training. There's a lot of things that need to get done to make sure that all of that is done in a really safe and efficient manner.
Hey, Brian, you
I
touched
think
on
there's
training.
one other.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're handling that, the frontline training in terms of communications and onboarding, and what you think retailers should be doing in that regard?
Ted?
Yeah, I can tell you what we've done. We have a pretty robust training program for our shoppers as we've been bringing them on. However, as a result of this situation before us, we've shortened that period, given them the very essential information, paired them with an experienced employee, given them on-the-job training as quickly as we possibly can, and then, frankly, letting them go and do their jobs. Here's the thing that I would say is that what we're seeing is a lot of elderly people who are in desperate need of food. The online option is fantastic for them, and so we feel that as we do with our entire operation, that we're providing a vital service. I think this online, the online capabilities that we have is really going that extra, doing that extra little bit to make sure that we're taking care of our at-risk members of our society. We've also set up essentially a call center for people that are having a difficult time navigating the online process because they've not done it before. We're actually taking online calls, and our staff members are actually in the system placing those orders for those customers. They tend to be elderly and not as comfortable with technology as our normal customers. So we're getting a lot of new customers through this.
How are you seeing? There's so many questions here. I'm just trying to look at a few of them at once and maybe condense. Sorry. How are you seeing
Ted,
other retailers using online shopping handle out of stocks in the store if they're not using perpetual inventory? Because customers may have 50 items in their cart, and you may only have 10 or so of those items available.
Yeah, so depending on the store, in grocery it's super challenging. If we look at liquor stores for us with online shopping, out of stocks, so Bevmo, for example, we know every night what they have in inventory for every store. And then during the day, not only do we take away the e-commerce sales, but we also get a real-time feed from them as somebody checks out through the lane. And so we know how many bottles of this wine that they have in the store. In grocery stores, I'll let Ted talk about, how you manage the stock. But if you think of, I go up and I buy yogurt, it's really easy for me to get 8 different flavors of yogurt. And then if the associate scans, 1 times 8 and puts that in, you don't see all of that in there. So from the online impact, what we see is stores are really rolling to, normally people have the choice of getting substitutions or no substitutions. And a lot of retailers are no longer contacting people with out of stocks, and they're just doing it. So if you order a can of beans, I might give you a can of corn, which isn't a great substitution normally, but today that's what we have. There's other times where you can't do that, and stores are very well aware of that. So they might be buying a product like Cheerios, and they won't substitute for it because the person might be buying it because it's a gluten-free cereal, and they don't want to send that in there. So there's a lot of training that the stores do. So we have tools on the online side, but certainly handling that in there. A lot of stores are limiting the number of products that can be added to the cart, but that's more a defensive move to be able to get things out of there. So they might be capping at 30 or 40 items to be able to get that done, or they might be capping at 30 or 40 items to say, I'll have that ready for you in 4 hours, but if you want more than that, it might be 18 hours before I can say that it's available to you. The other thing that's been interesting is we've had stores implement like 3 max across the whole catalog. Like you can't add more than 3 of anything into your cart to try to keep people online from just buying too much of things. And then the last thing is we talked to customers over this last weekend, and we added a new option in our platform, which is just notify me when ready. So instead of picking a date and a time, I just place an order. And when the store processes that pickup order, I'm just emailing the person automatically or texting or sending a push notification and saying, hey, come to the Mequon Sendix and you can now pick up your order. That allows the store to respond to that flexibility and what's in there, to add labor if they need to be able to do that. In the end, this isn't like a technical solution and it's not a store solution. It's really an entire ecosystem. The suppliers need to be providing the food down and getting it into the store along with the paper products and cleaning and everything else. As a digital provider, we've got to be able to provide a mechanism for people to understand what's available and get those orders in. And then the retailer, of course, has to manage all of that along with the customer to be able to get that out the door. Ted, how are you guys handling out of stocks for online orders in the store?
Yeah, this is what I can tell you. Now, I have actually been out shopping orders, so I've dealt with this firsthand. First of all, customers are just grateful that you're putting together an order for them. We've made it clear to them that for the time being, if they say substitute on a product, and the system says allows them to select substitute or not substitute. If they say substitute, we're going to pick the best alternative for them. And that's just it. Sales are final. We're not going to, and I can tell you that the customers understand it, and also the out of stocks. They understand that. We've had actually very positive response from the customers, just appreciating the fact that we're taking the time to provide this service for them. The biggest issue has been ramping up. The demand, like I said, is so high right now, we can't process the orders fast enough. Ramping up our capabilities in this area has been one of our top priorities, objectives over the last week with our executive team and our top personnel in the company. And we're actually implementing something this weekend where we're going to have what we call a power shop. It's going to be more in the evening, and we're going to knock out as many orders as we can into the future and get those customers to come in to pick them up, or we'll deliver it to them. Again, to speed up the process and increase our capability.
Okay.
David, I saw a couple of questions in there about prices. And do you see prices continuing to go up? And then also, what has been the effect on the fresh produce supply being in there? I know it's very different from, the typical hard goods.
Yeah. So again, you think about growers, and they were set up to produce those items that they grow. And whenever we hit them with a surge, they had an ability to reach forward a little bit and harvest a little bit further in advance than they would have normally. But you also think that on produce commodities and on meat commodities, proteins, etc., that really there's a shift that's moved from the restaurant business that has moved over to the retail. So it's not 100% incremental. They have adjusted nicely. They've adjusted much better than the CPG companies, as we discussed earlier. Their ability to surge volume, put it in different packaging for retail versus going into food service or processing it to go to food service, that has shifted. As far as on cost, all of the commodities are supply and demand. Some of them certainly are questionable as to why they increased as quickly as they did. We've seen some pretty crazy escalations, 3 and 4 times the cost on things like eggs, for instance, that it's hard to do. We've also seen spot markets for freight increase, as much as double on a lot of lanes where we would be looking for surplus in the spot market to be able to get product hauled for us. It wasn't under a longer-term contract. So there's been increases, and that, of course, one way or the other flows into product cost. So there's a lot of factors that are flowing into that. We also have, of course, starting today, FEMA is now beginning to reach out and request assets. I think they have 1,000 dry and 1,000 refrigerated trailers and some drivers that they're asking for, and we have to expect that there's going to be much more of that as our armed forces and others have to build up infrastructure, and also as they're dealing with issues in a lot of the harder hit areas. So there's going to be some demands. It's going to cause the markets to be and costs to be more volatile. And some of them we're going to see a lot of different changes, and some of the CPG companies will attempt at least to pull back on promotional funds and other things to where they're not looking to try to increase sales because they can't keep up with the demand that they have. So there will be things that will change the wholesale cost and also will, of course, affect retails.
Okay, great.
I would
Thank you,
echo,
David.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
I'm sorry. I was just going to echo what David said. What we've been very impressed with the produce, our ability to stay in stock. It seems like the quality and everything, they've really adapted well to it. On the pricing side, the big one that we've seen, it like David mentioned, is eggs. I would encourage, if you're a retailer listening to this, we have a system daily. We're monitoring all of our price changes to make sure that we're doing the right thing on our end from a customer perception standpoint. We took big increases last week in our meat that we use for our grind. Rather than change our price, we basically just ate margin because we did not, on an important item like that, we did not want the impression out there that somehow we were taking advantage of this situation. So I think every retailer just needs to be very mindful of that. We watch it daily. Every price change is looked at to determine whether or not it's necessary. And in those situations, especially on an important item, we're actually choosing to eat margin ourselves rather than pass on a price change to our customers.
Okay.
That's a smart move, Ted.
Yeah, we're bumping up against our time. I got one final parting thought. I think this is a good way to end with Brian, your thoughts on, as a technologist of the group, do you see the way we shop for food changing after the impact of COVID-19 all settles?
I believe that a lot of this is going to be, one, people are going to have tried online grocery for the first time, and they love working with their independent grocer and going in and getting that, but they're going to realize that they control the time. And so people are going to be placing more online orders, especially for click and collect, where it's all their schedule. I know delivery sounds like it, but you have to be there. With click and collect, the grocer can execute that really easily. And then I place my whole order. I go to the store at my time that I want. They put my groceries in my car, and I drive away. And that allows for social distancing, but it also allows people to purchase back their time as we get more to a regular schedule on what people are doing. I think the bigger thing that's going to happen on the technology side, especially for grocers, is using strong platforms like Freshop, being able to group products together and have, box 1, box 2, box 3 that has a big collection of items that are guaranteed to be in stock that I can get in 2 hours to be able to get that, and to be able to have more planning available to say, hey, listen, I need food for 2 weeks, and I want to be able to just one click assort this whole thing. I'm going to delete out a couple, I'm going to add a couple, and make it go. So it's all going to be about convenience, being able to get things done quickly, but also being able to get the products that you can rely on so that when you go to the store, that you're going to come home with the products that you were hoping to have. I think grocers are really going to step up and fill that void.
All right, excellent. Dave, Ted, any last quick thoughts?
No, I guess what I would say is, Mike, I just want to thank everybody in the entire industry. The way that people have came together, the collaboration with other companies that are outside the business, the outreach, the offers of help, the appreciation. It's a great time to come together, and so we're just very thankful for that. Just very thankful to be able to contribute a small part, keeping America fed.
Excellent.
I echoed
Yeah.
David's comments. He's right on, and I think we're in a unique industry where we can get on a call like this and share best practices and thoughts in a very competitive industry. I think that's pretty unique.
Yep. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate everybody taking the time. I think this was a lot of really good information, and let's get back after it and keep America fed. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.